Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
The Iowa caucus, Dr. Robert A. Heineman, political science professor emeritus, Alfred University. Latest on that is 97% of the results are out. Mayor Pete and Bernie Sanders almost tied, with Mayor Pete slightly ahead. What do you think?
That's in terms of delegates. In terms of a popular vote, I think Bernie has led throughout the process. And that's because some caucuses, the margin is greater, and so that the number of people actually voting varies. But I assume that each district gets so many delegates, and that's where Buttigieg has been able to hold a bit of a lead. But again, that could well disappear too. But it won't be that much difference between the two of them in terms of delegates. But I think Bernie can claim the popular vote there in the caucuses. Yes. So it's definitely a victory for Buttigieg. I don't think there's any question about it. He took advantage of the fact, I think, that three of the candidates were sitting in the Senate as jurors and really hit it hard. What's interesting there is, of course, that Joe Biden had the same opportunity, and he may have made an attempt to really come in there full bore, but he fell pretty flat. And so it has to be a pretty big disappointment to the Biden effort, and it has to be a big, not only disappointment, point of concern, I think, for the big political power makers in the Democrat Party, who clearly do not want Bernie Sanders as their candidate. So that's kind of where we come out of Iowa.
Hey, did you see that Tom Perez, the Democrat National Committee chair, wants the votes recanvassed?
Well, I don't know if you can do that. I guess you can. You're just simply dealing with slips of paper in which some of these things have been summarized. But so he wants them recanvassed because he thinks that'll help Biden, you think? Is that what he's after?
I don't know. He says enough is enough in light of all the problems that have emerged in the implementation of the delegate selection plan. And in order to assure public confidence in the results, he wants the Iowa Democrats to do a recanvass.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's okay. I can see where he's coming from there. I don't think it's going to help Biden at all, though. So as we said on our previous Newsmaker shows, Brian, the one to watch really is Bloomberg. And what Bloomberg's approach here, I think, is basically, and I think it has been this from the very beginning, has been to wait for Biden to flame out. And as they say in the detective stories that I listen to, it kind of resembles water swirling around the drain there. So I think unless there's something really surprising pop up here, I think Mr. Biden is floating off to the edge, as is Elizabeth Warren. I think a number of people suggested that Buttigieg's success came from voters who couldn't bring themselves to vote for Biden and went over and threw their support behind Buttigieg. And I don't know how long that's going to last either. But in any case, I think you can expect Bloomberg to pour more money into the campaign, more people, and become more of a force.
You're right, Doc. From MSNBC.com, Michael Bloomberg doubles ad spending after Iowa chaos.
Yes, well, I really don't have to depend on MSNBC.
No,
Brian.
but you and MSNBC are on the same page. Imagine that.
I don't. I'd rather not imagine that, yes. So we go into New Hampshire, and if Buttigieg does exceptionally well there, then I'm going to scratch my head a little bit more. But I expect Bernie to do quite well in New Hampshire. I mean, it's a neighboring state, and so it's quite possible he'll come out of Iowa and New Hampshire with basically victories, so that we run into a situation where he begins to get some momentum. And I think what we have to watch out for here, Brian, and this is what the Democrats have to watch out for. And by the way, I believe AOC was in Iowa campaigning for Bernie, was she not?
Yeah, she's been doing that.
Yeah. So she
all along, by the way.
Yeah, she can claim some credit for that, I think, in terms of turning out younger voters and that sort of thing. But here's where a possibility lurks, and this is suggested to me by someone other than myself. You get into the national convention for the Democrats, and you could have basically a split convention. Now, the Democrats, I think, have something like 300 super delegates. Now, these are the big policy makers in the Democratic Party, the power brokers, so to speak. They cannot vote on the first ballot. So you could go to the first ballot in Milwaukee and have, say, Bernie with more delegates than anybody else and more popular votes than anybody else, but not enough to carry the convention. And then it goes to the second ballot, at which point the power brokers, the superdelegates, can come in. And they might well end up giving it then to Bloomberg, which would be of some concern, I think, to people like AOC, Bernie, and a lot of these other people who have been working very hard.
Have you dropped the idea of Governor Andrew Cuomo to the rescue in favor of Mike Bloomberg to the rescue for the Democrats?
Well, the idea was out there that Cuomo really wanted to be, Biden's running mate. I don't know if he wants to be Bloomberg's running mate or not. That would really be a fascinating combination. The mayor of New York City and the governor of New York State running as the Democrat candidates. I mean, that's not undoable, don't get me wrong. But I'd say unlikely. But no, I think Cuomo's still lurking around the edges here in terms of who knows what's going to really happen here at the convention. So from the Democrat point of view, it remains, I think, quite interesting. And we'll have to watch how that plays out. I think Buttigieg is going to run into real problems when he gets down to South Carolina. I don't see him getting many votes from the African-American community down there. And that's where Biden is supposed to be pretty strong. But, we'll just have to see how that plays out. So I guess, is New Hampshire primary Tuesday? Is that a Tuesday as opposed to a Monday?
I think it's Monday.
Another Monday, huh? Okay. Well, a good way to start the week, but I have to say this, Brian. The Iowa caucuses the experience there is probably not a good way to start your campaign for the Democrats.
I guess not.
It's an embarrassment across the board. But you got to kind of feel sorry for those folks. I agree with them. I'd just soon see a sort of a clear-cut picture come out of there. Now, on the other hand, I think Mr. Trump carried Iowa with over 97% of the vote, and that's a problem I think the Democrats have, is that Mr. Trump's support in the Republican Party remains way, way up there in the upper 90s. So he has a pretty solid base there that seems to be holding steady. And that's obviously a real plus.
The power of prayer in Washington at breakfast time.
Well,
at the prayer breakfast, can I tell you what happened?
Well, you surely can.
I mean, I wasn't there. But anyways, At the prayer breakfast, the president denounced House Speaker Pelosi and Senator Mitt Romney, not by name, but quoting about how the two like to talk about how they pray and then are rotten to him, Trump. Trump said that Romney uses religion as a crutch. So the power of prayer.
Now, hold it. Did he say Romney uses religion as a crutch, or did he just say that some of them use
He didn't say Romney, but he was talking about Romney.
Yeah. I think that's unfair to Romney. Although I'm really, disappointed in him. I supported him all 3 times he ran. I was on his New York State election committee the last time he ran. And although, again, he voted to convict or against acquittal only on one of the charges. The other charge, he voted with the rest of the Republicans. But again, that's just really, you just kind of, I think personally he really dislikes Trump. And it just gets under his skin, and after Trump was elected, Romney interviewed with him and I think was trying to get a cabinet position or something of that sort. And Trump wasn't. Can you imagine how much that would have worked for Trump? Romney? That probably wouldn't have been a good idea. As for Pelosi, that's a whole different story. And
what did you make of her ripping up the speech? Congressman Tom Reed said it was childish and petty. What do you say?
I think the whole thing was, petty would be a good point. Throughout the Trump speech, and this is what is really cheap about it. I mean, if you want to go face-to-face with Trump on Twitters or walk out of meetings or whatever, or point your fingers at him, but she's behind him. Trump can't see what's happening at all behind him. And there she is pulling all these facial gestures and
cleaning her teeth, wasn't she?
All kinds of maneuvers, and then ripping up the copy of the speech.
Right.
I mean, that is just cheap. And as one of my friends again over in Alfred mentioned, maybe it's gotten to the point that when the president makes his State of the Union address, he should have the Secret Service behind him. So that he's got his back covered.
So they're not throwing paper airplanes at him.
Right, so he's got his back covered as well as the front. I mean, no, that's just totally petty and trashy, and I think it's going to hurt the Democrats a lot. I think people are just shaking their heads at that. That's just...
Now, what about Trump not refusing to shake Nancy Pelosi's hand? That's what they say precipitated that whole thing?
I think not. I don't think he shook hands with either one of them.
Is that bad?
He didn't shake hands with Pence, and it's not clear to me he saw Pelosi stick her hand out, frankly. I mean, you're up there, you're handing out your drafts of your speech, you're obviously nervous, etc. So I don't know. He may have seen her stick her hand. Now, obviously, I think if he'd have shaken hands with Pence, then it would have probably turned to Pelosi, and But my friends say, and again, I didn't catch this, that he never shook hands with Pence either.
Huh.
So he was just getting up there to speak. And
can we talk about what he said?
And on the other hand, I wouldn't blame him for not shaking hands with Pelosi. So, go ahead.
On what he said in the State of the Union.
Yeah, I didn't catch much of it. So
okay, here's the highlights. Trump listed all the groups that now have low unemployment. That would be summed up veterans and ethnic minorities.
Right.
Trump compared that with the Obama administration. Trump said that Obama had an increase in welfare programs, not programs, but people on welfare. 300,000 people under the Obama administration, according to Trump, lost or left their jobs. And
yeah, well, you can play with those figures in a lot of different ways. I think it's fair to say, any way you cut it, that the economy and people are better off today than they were under Obama or previous administrations, as far as that's concerned. I don't think you've seen a economy like this for, I think 50 years or more.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah. So, and Trump is going to take credit for him, and he certainly has every right to do that. And I think in many ways he's had some influence on moving us along. The people inside the Beltway, and unfortunately some of my colleagues, simply cannot believe in the kind of democracy that America is founded on. And the democracy we're founded on, Brian, is that people are capable of taking care of themselves and figuring out how to deal with life challenges on their own. They don't need a bureaucracy in there who who's convinced that they know quite a bit more than they do. Somebody like Hillary Clinton, who clearly has a much better idea of how we should be living. And Bloomberg's another one in that respect. He clearly is, in terms of gun control, in terms of the size of the soft drinks you can have.
Coke control.
Yeah, the whole.
Yeah, I'm looking at my
some of these
little
other
Coke here on the side.
Pretty innocuous. I guess I can drink my soda pop in smaller containers. It's not a big thing. Guns, though, is a pretty fundamental issue, and so is abortion, of course. So the point is, what Trump is saying to Americans, go out there, do your thing. We know you can do it, and let government get out of the way. And that's worked out pretty well. And let me say, I think the potential for even more increasement in the economy is there. Number one, we've been talking about a bipartisan effort to fund highway repair and bridge repair and things of that sort, which is sorely needed in this country. But right now, I think among the Democrats, if you do that, fund something like that, you're going to increase the jobs in the country. You're going to increase the manufacturing in the country. You're going to pump the economy up even more. I don't know if some of these Democrats are too eager to do that right now. And the other point is, in terms of Brexit and Great Britain, I think Boris Johnson is going to be looking to the United States to complete some pretty hefty trade deals there, and that's going to pump up our economy even more. So the potential is on the upside is pretty good right now, and I guess we and Mr. Trump can sort of sit back and watch it go. Now, the real problem here is that Mr. Trump holds it down a little bit, keeps his mouth shut, which is, of course, expecting way more than is possible. But he certainly is on a roll. There's no question.
Trump's acquittal speech yesterday.
Yeah.
Trump denounced dirty cops who went after them, calling them leakers and liars. He used a word I will probably want to use on the radio as far as the investigation into Russia collusion. He denounced that. He called those who impeached him evil. Trump said he and his family went through hell, and so did the whole country. As usual, he was criticized for being unpresidential. Your thoughts?
Well, no, I think he's got every right to say that. I think the tribulations he's been forced to deal with here it's just outrageous. And what really is outrageous, I think, is you get some of these senators saying, well, no, the House has proved their case. Are you kidding me? There's just nothing there. And for any of these guys to make that kind of remark, I think it's just, it's either highly partisan or they're just plain stupid. But I do think some of these Democrats that voted to convict Trump are going to pay a pretty hefty price for that here in a few months. And I think McConnell thinks so too. It seems to me when he followed up after the acquittal vote there, he made it pretty plain that the Republicans running for re-election, he thinks are in pretty good shape right now. And I would guess there are a number of Democrats, maybe not so much so. I was surprised that we didn't get 3 or 4 Democrats vote for acquittal as well. But I don't know. They must have had a lot of pressure on them.
Can we talk about what Adam Schiff said?
Who cares what Adam Schiff said?
Well, it's kind of funny, actually. He
Yes.
said that Trump could offer Alaska to the Russians in exchange for support for the next election, or Trump could move to Mar-a-Lago permanently and let Jared Kushner run the country. Your thoughts?
Well, once again, that's a little petty. Wouldn't you say it's a little petty, Brian?
He lives in an imaginary world, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the big problems there. And we'll see how far off base that is. In this day and age, with all these virtual reality shows and things of that sort, I guess I can understand where Mr. Schiff would get off there in the Netherlands, and
Yeah.
But what's really frightening is to have people with this kind of orientation in positions of some power. I mean, that's a little scary.
He's one step away from imaginary friends. I mean, he's something else. Yeah, I mean, the guy reads a transcript claiming that Trump made all these threats to the Ukrainian leader, and he was making it up.
Yeah, some of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
The other thing we haven't spent much time on here is the whole area of foreign affairs, and the fact that Mr. Trump has made, quite a bit of progress here in the area of the Middle East and in some of these other areas. And again, I think it's pretty clear that we're very close to ending up with some sort of agreement with the Taliban, allowing us to pull most of our troops out of Afghanistan. So we would be pulled out of Syria, basically pulled out of Iraq, and if we pull out of Afghanistan, it keeps most of our troops here at home and reasonably safe. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Final question.
Yes.
Department of Homeland Security is banning New York residents from signing up for what they call trusted traveler programs. These are those things that make it so you can get through the TSA line faster at the airport.
Right.
And it's happening because of the green light law in New York State that allows illegals to have driver's licenses.
Oh, is that right? I thought it was because of this virus that they were...
No, it's because of the illegals getting driver's license. Homeland Security does not trust that. Governor Cuomo says this is a move of retaliation against New Yorkers. Congressman Tom Reed says it's happening because of bad Democrat laws in a one-party state.
Now, here's a rumor I could throw out here if you want to talk about retaliation. My understanding is one of our local sheriffs was... Apparently there's a letter that came out from Albany that wanted the sheriffs to sign on to, I don't know whether it was illegals and driver's license or what it was essentially. And one of our sheriffs said, no, I'm not signing that.
Uh-huh.
And they shut off his 911.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for a few hours, they didn't shut it off. And so they said, you're not going to sign, we'll shut it down.
Wow.
Now you want to talk about retaliation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he signed. I mean, what are you going to do? You don't have any choice. Yep.
Wow.
So it's they play a pretty rough game.
Yeah, that's tougher than Spitzer.
That's a bit of a rumor I got, but
that's tougher than Elliot Spitzer on the same issue.
Yeah. I don't know what exactly they wanted the sheriff to sign up for, and I'm not naming the sheriff, so it's not.
Wow.
Play with
what was it? Elliot called himself a steamroller?
Is that what he called himself?
That was the analogy.
Was that the guy that was in room 9C there in the hotel?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought that up.
We got to go.
All right.